Here.
Trustee Lappin.
Here.
Clerk Palovich here. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Here.
Trustee Kroll. Trustee Dunkel.
Here.
Supervisor Skibby.
Here. Leading to the adoption of the agenda, I would like the board's permission to make an adaptation to the agenda as presented and move old business A to just above public comment. Are there any other additions or subtractions to the agenda? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as modified? So moved. Support. It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Roll call.
Trustee Lappin. Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Foley.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. And at this point of the meeting, I would like the board to listen to the recommendation. My recommendation as supervisor is that this board, as I listen to the public input session on the 18th, is that the board appoint Glenn Kennard, Margie Haxima, Bruce Duncan, Tim Rumbles, Nancy Monti, Sean Shanky as representatives from the public, with Trustee Lappin as liaison to an ad hoc committee with input from Kirk Malcolmson, our building official. I will serve as ex officio member to fully investigate Ordinance 135 as it currently stands, and to bring back to this board a recommendation that will be in the best interest of the residents of the Charter Township of Alpena. During this process, Ordinance 135 will not be enforced, and prior to the committee's recommendation to the board, we will host another input session at a venue that will be amply sized to accommodate public interest. Is there a motion to such recommendation?
So moved. I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Foley.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. At this moment, if you would entertain the board, Ms. Haxima, would you like to stand to and everybody just kind of stand at the podium and let what you are going to be bringing in terms of your experience and what you'll be doing to help the township move forward with Ordinance 135?
Surprise. No, this was a surprise, folks.
I think I don't know if this is on or not.
It is.
Okay. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I also thank you for the opportunity that we had to.
Microphone is not on.
Can't hear you.
No. It is on. It should be. Underneath the green target, it was on. On the right-hand side, there's a little toggle switch. It should be up. Is it on?
Yep. But, don't see any light ready.
Should be right there.
Is there a power?
Took a long time. Check the plug first.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Well, first of all, you did tell me I was going to get up and talk today, but I will do the best that I can for representing the group here tonight.
Yes.
I want to thank you for the opportunity that we had to meet a couple weeks ago and to sort of air our views as to this ordinance of 135. As we all know, the ordinance was not accepted as something that we thought we could live with as a group of people. I represent the realtors. I represent actually everyone that's here in this room because we deal with all types of property when we go to sell them. And we want to make it easy, we want to make it smooth, and we want to make it without a lot of fees that are involved with it. And I appreciate the opportunity that you've given to us with the voices that have been heard last time to be able to have an ad hoc committee where different sectors are represented and we can look at something that would be fair and honest for all people within this area regarding rentals and also blight. So I don't know whether there's anything else you want from me. Obviously, as realtor, we represent our personal private property rights. We have fought for years to defend those rights, And this is another case that we feel that this was an extraordinary, kind of blight on our profession as far as being able to sell real estate and be able to work without a lot of encumbrances, and that people could freely do what they want to with their personal property. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I hope it works well.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. Yes, you
Just a thought came when we're talking about not enforcing this ordinance, that'll be the case. The board just made that order. In the meantime, the township does have a blight ordinance, so it's not as if blight won't be enforced. We've had one for some time, and allows us to issue municipal civil infraction tickets in the district court, and it's been a procedure that works. So, in the meantime, we're not without a blight ordinance if people are concerned about that.
Mr. Kimball.
My name is Glenn Pinar. I am a builder here in Alpena. I'm also a property owner. I own, in the township, I own, I think, 7 different properties, some of them vacant, so, a lot of this wording and stuff is of interest to me. That is one of the reasons, I'm happy to serve on and try and come up with something that will work for everyone. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kimball.
Hi, my name is Bruce Duncan. I'm a business owner here in the area. I also live in the township, own both commercial and residential rentals. Here representing that. I will tell the trustees that I do have grave concerns with ordinance 135, which many of us from the township came and expressed here a couple weeks ago. And I guess the move is to work on this ordinance and make it something that the people of the township are pleased with. Even though I'm part of this group, I'm not positive that can be done, but I'm willing to get in there and try to represent both the interests of people in rentals and commercial property, but also the township and people. I think the input session a couple of weeks ago was pretty remarkable in the number of people that came out and the concerns expressed. So that's why I agreed to do this.
Thank you very much. Motels, he did contact me. He is working on a project on his property, and will not be in attendance this evening, but will help move forward with regards to that interest as well. Ms. Monti.
Nancy Monti. Actually, thank you for the opportunity also to represent basically my expertise in the financial industry, as well as a property owner. We own many properties, one in the township, other townships, and the city. And especially to represent the people in regards to Chapter 4 of this ordinance, in regards to inspection and residential dwellings prior to the sale and transfer, and the right of private property owners. So I thank you for this opportunity, and hopefully working together with other members of the committee that we can represent the people of Alpena Township. Thank you.
Mr. Rumbles.
Tim Rumbles, owner of Northern Abstract. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of time to go over all the concerns that I and the others have, and I don't think this is necessarily the moment to do that, but I'm gonna help the committee focus on how the ordinance as proposed would affect real estate transactions, and how possibly we need to look at a little different sight into this blight, fixing the blight ordinance. So that's my main concern, is how it affects sales.
Thank you very much. At this moment, this is an opportunity for public comment. If you do have public comment, please stand to the podium, state your name.
You sign in too?
I know who you are.
I'm Don Gilman at 220 Maple Street, Alpena, Michigan. I do not own any property in the township anymore, but, you December 22nd, Saturday, the first I heard about this ordinance was by reading it, we advertised it in the Alpena News. So, while I'm not in the financial end or anything, I am a building official in northern Michigan with 19 years of experience. And I've got over 15 years of experience with the rental ordinance. The city of Alpena actually did the first rental inspection ordinance up here. It wasn't as broad-based, it was a standalone ordinance. We've always had the International Property Maintenance Code as our property maintenance code. The city's had it since 1950, went from BOCA, IMPC. I can understand how people would be concerned looking at that book. That's also the book that we use when we do our rental inspections. The difference is, well, the problem as I see it, from the inspection side, from the governmental liability side, is that we usually, the city of Alpena, I'm not trying to toot their horn, but obviously that's what I'm the most familiar with. They identified a problem with some residential rental units, and how are we gonna get it? So that's what spurred the whole conversation of the rental inspection ordinance. The city we probably spent about 3.5 or 4 years before we implemented it, from the time we started looking at it. And so, as I read through this ordinance, and I'm not gonna go over it, now that I know Glenn and Margie and all the people around the committee, I can talk to them, but the bigger problem I see is there's no fee schedule established. And I understand that, because as I stand here, there's no way in the world Alpena Township knows how many rental units you have, it's impossible. So, you need to first register them. Then, once you register, I mean, how do you set a fee schedule as a governmental entity without making it look like we're imposing a tax? Because all those fees have to be based on cost. Our cost in the city right now, as an example, is $75 a unit every 3 years. And I can tell you, we have 1,685 rental units as of right now. So every 3 years they're inspected. So that pulls in about $35,000 a year, and I can tell you for the cost of my extra inspector, that covers about 60% of the cost of the program and its salary. So the other 40% is borne by the rest of the residents, and they're more than happy to do that, because through a rental inspection ordinance, you clean up a lot of properties, increase their property values, you reduce a lot of work, just as a normal routine business. But it takes a lot of time, and the other thing is, I was at the last meeting, I think Kurt told one of the landlords, well, you'll just tell me when you wanna have your unit inspected. The other thing you have to be very careful of is you don't target people. So when you have a 3-year program, once you know approximately how many units you have, because you're gonna discover more through whatever the fine is for not registering, blah, blah, blah. But you have to break your area up geographically to be fair. So you break it, if you got a 3-year program, you break it into 3 chunks of Alpena Township. Then you take a third of each of those chunks. A's are your first year, B's are your second year, then nobody can come back to you in court and say, well, you charged it, you picked that. And then we had some landlords might wanna get them all done the first year, that's fine, that's just good. But, and I know that this is pretty much verbatim from Lincoln Park. I mean, just about everything that was handed out at the last meeting is available on their website. And, so other than just the rental part of it, with some of the definitions, hotel rooms, early on, our ordinance was, you gotta let us in, we have an ordinance. Till the first time the person residing there says, no, you're not coming in. Then you have to get a search warrant administratively. If you have a good ordinance, you'll get one. But I don't understand how you're gonna do it in a motel or a hotel. It's gonna be a different person the next day. So, and Tim may know more about that. Are you getting it for a property and then?
Well,
that property
and that's where we're going with having a panel, where this is gonna be a continued discussion, so, but.
But I would just say, you really need to establish, some idea how much work this is gonna take, to be able to establish a legitimate fee schedule with a whole muster of it, if somebody challenges. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Sean, the broker owner of Great North Real Estate. When I look through this, and one of the issues that we're having a hard time getting answers during the public input section. But one of the things that I had was, what did we even use to determine if we have a blight issue in the first place? So on a micro level from the state, Michigan Municipal League, those type of agencies, they identified 10 primary things. Ordinance 127 already addresses 6 of those 10 items. Now on the macro level, the Federal Reserve and HUD They talk about things like economic disinvestment, increased unemployment, low sales, and none of those seem to apply to Alpena Township. So our unemployment from February 9 to February 2018 dropped almost 50%. Went from 15.5 to 7.4. Now, for residential sales in 2015, the average sale was $92,697. In 2018, that has gone up $12,000 per sale on average. So our property values are on the rise. And every year, there's been less and less properties on the market, period. Same thing with vacant land. Now, this is gonna be acreages, building lots, all vacant land. So those have gone up almost 15,000 per property per sale. That's $15,000 more every time you sell that property, just in 3 years. And just like residential, there's less properties available on the market. So ordinance 127 addresses the state level concerns, what is identified from Lansing as being concerns, most of them. And then from a federal level, it doesn't seem we have any concerns. And I'm worried that this ordinance is going to take those financial numbers and take them in the wrong direction, where we will end up like some of these municipalities. Another question that we had is what other blight control measures or programs were considered or consulted? That's another thing we've been trying to get answers with in the minutes. As far as rural revitalization, community pride, what other possibilities were even considered? Another question is going to be what outside agencies were consulted. There is a lot of not-for-profit, federal, state level agencies that deal with blight as a matter of their 40-hour-a-week job. And who was brought in, who was consulted, who did we talk to even determine what course we were gonna go? I tried to look at other municipalities that have the IPMC, the ICC version of the IPMC. There's also a HUD version to determine how they really relate to us. And in reality, they don't. They're all urban. So there's only a couple, I picked out 4 of them that seem to be as close as possible. So you got Garden City, you've got Lincoln Park, City of Monroe, and City of Kalamazoo. Now, 2 of those 4 were recipients of the MPS grant that came to the state of Michigan not too long ago. So they already started out with their share of $244 million to start instituting this program. I'm not aware of Alpena Township getting a truckload of cash recently to start this program. So we're trying to start something that they used millions of taxpayer dollars to do. The exception there, so Garden City and Lincoln Park both received their share of that $244 million. City of Monroe did not. However, City of Monroe is losing people. They only have 13.2% people 65 and older, fixed income. They have almost 20% of their population is living in poverty as it is, and their population density is almost 2,300 people per square mile. City of Kalamazoo does use the IPMC prior to sales, but only for sales that are not going to be primary residences. So these are investment type properties. This gentleman's buying the property, he's gonna flip it into a rental, you have to get that inspection. If this person's buying the property and it's going to be their primary residence, you do not. Now by comparison, we have over a quarter of our population is 65 and up. That's the highest out of anybody that uses this program. Our population is 8,770. That's the lowest out of anybody who's using this program. All those 4 other people have had people moving out of the community. They are leaving. We have lost just 292 people in 10 years. We are at 13.4%.
And Mr. Shaw, I
yep.
don't mean to interrupt, but that was the whole point of having each sector represented moving forward. And so those concerns can really be addressed through the realtor aspect.
These concerns could have been addressed before this was ever brought up.
And I do not disagree.
We are already 2 months into this, and we now suddenly have representation of the people who put you in those seats. 2 months later. We have a positive economic system right now in Alpena Township. We are moving in the right direction, drastically in the right direction, far better than most of the rest of the state. Kalamazoo, who has this process, has over 30% of people living in poverty. We are moving in the right direction, and we are doing things. We are creating ordinances to bypass existing ordinance that work, that's already been stated tonight, in an effort to create a problem where a problem doesn't exist.
Any other public comment?
Hi, Beverly Banks, Township residents. I just have a couple questions. First, I would like to know, I don't know if anyone else has wondered, how were these people selected? No disrespect whatsoever to you, and I appreciate your experience. How are they selected, and how will we as the public be able to get our input to them?
Okay, I can answer that. I actually reached out because a lot of these individuals showed up at the input session on the 18th that represented 4 issues that were brought from every professional aspect: building, rental, title, banking. And that's how that panel was approached, because they could be a receptacle. There are some aspects where moving forward with Liaison Lappin, where there will be some more opportunity for input from all the residents of the township, and meeting dates will be ready once they all get together and are comprised. There again, there will be another opportunity while they're, whatever they work on and comes back and their recommendation, where before it meets the board's approval at whatever state is brought back to it, will be another public input session at a site that will be able to adequately house the attendees. So,
Okay, so I hear a lot of business. I'm not, and I hear a dual role from a lot of these people. Do you have anyone that sits on the committee who is strictly just a resident?
Strictly just, no. I guess that would be one voice that would be a potential to be it. And that's where I think we as a board, and I myself sitting before everybody on the public input session on the 18th, is willing. We've heard the issues and concerns, and we're not shying away.
I just want to make sure that everyone truly is represented. Not that you're not going to do a good job, I think you will, but if you're saying this is our peers, we need to make sure that we cover all groups of peers.
I believe any correspondence that the public provides too will be given over to the committee, so if you want to put anything in writing, or however you get it to Nathan or to the board, then
Your email.
you'll get it to them.
Thank you.
Everybody should. Mr.
CEO of Wolverine State Credit Union. There's a lot of concerns the financial industry has with this ordinance, primarily with slowing down the mortgage process and adding additional fees onto that. I won't get into the details, but I will make a recommendation for the trustees tonight, and that is to repeal the ordinance tonight, then have your committee come up and draft a new one that you could bring back and approve at a later date. So that's just my suggestion.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth Stutzman. I live at 144 South First Avenue in the city of Alpena. But tonight I'm here representing the Convention and Visitors Bureau, which covers the entire Alpena area. I did submit via email, but I believe it was too late to get to this meeting.
Everybody does.
Okay, good. I wanted to check and make sure it came through. I tried to be very thorough in our request and also provide justification for why we are commenting on these things. So we aren't just saying we don't like it, we're saying why we don't like it, and I hope that that will be handed over to the committee as well to be taken into consideration with their discussions also. And that's all.
Thank you very much, Mary Beth.
Angie Steva, 635 River Street. I also own property 7277 US 23 South. I feel that this should be repealed. I don't feel that the public has been properly informed prior to this taking place. I don't feel we were properly represented. I think it should be repealed, and then you should reconsider addressing the blight issue, enforcing those issues, and not penalizing the property owners, we who pay taxes, who take care of our property, who are upstanding citizens and participate and try and follow all the rules. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Yes, Ms. Montag.
Nancy Montag. I just have one question, well, it's a couple of questions actually, even though I'm on the committee. Just like Mr. Gilman said, this, to put together an ordinance like this, like you did, takes a long time. It's a long process to really look into that. And my question was, because I think you said, or the gentleman said that was here, that it was done over a few months. How many of you actually, because every time somebody did ask a question, it was, well, that's the International Property Maintenance Code. How many of you received a copy of the International Maintenance Property Code when you started this project?
I believe I was the only one that did it.
So then nobody even, so you didn't get it, you didn't read it, and when you prepared an ordinance like this, you never compared each section, each area to what was written in that ordinance. Was that ordinance mostly written by the gentleman that's gonna be the official? And then you guys accepted it?
Amen.
That's why we're having this opportunity to explore every and
So you
all
just
options.
didn't get the book, you didn't read it?
I read the book, it was posted properly, it was posted 1 month prior to it even being in the newspaper. And at that one point in time, nobody had any public comment until I was afforded the ability to have that public input session, which started this conversation. And so, where best to take the conversation, but to listen to the public and to move forward accordingly. It doesn't mean that repeal right now is gonna change, that may be the end game. But to have something as a benchmark to move forward is still a steadfast approach. And maybe that's where, with this committee and further exploration, that is gonna be the recommendation of an independent committee that really does, to a large extent, is comprised of township residents, business owners, site-specific individuals that will give us the best input to move forward.
I can address repeal too, because this is a charter township, it can't be repealed tonight. It's another ordinance, it'd be an ordinance to repeal an ordinance. Because it's a charter township, you gotta introduce an ordinance. The city has a process too where you gotta read it and introduce it. Well, because it's a charter township, that's what we gotta do. So it'd have to be simple, it'd be drafted and then introduced, public comment received, published, notice of publication stating this is gonna be considered this ordinance for adoption at another meeting. So it can't happen tonight.
Well, maybe we should start that process.
They'd need an ordinance and I don't have an ordinance, so.
Our next meeting is on February 12th, so there's opportunities, like I said. It may not be the perfect scenario, but at least it's a starting point where these individuals can honestly look at it and say, yeah, maybe we do need to start over. That is, that would be the perfect opportunity to say, this isn't what's gonna work, and move forward.
And the ordinance can't be enforced now, the board just mandated that they can't, so it won't be.
Yes, sir.
This is a result of charter, becoming a charter township or anything. You're back,
no.
before you start this, I read
Okay,
a lot, I
well,
show up a lot.
These are two different things. The only
I know,
reason,
but I'm
well,
trying to see
yeah.
if there's any connection here.
No, there isn't, just the only
Okay.
connection is the procedure for adopting an ordinance, just, there's an extra step.
Well, apparently people like myself don't pay enough attention, but I guess we're gonna have to.
Wonderful. Public participation is never a bad thing, as I stated at the last public input session.
The IPMC is licensed. Did we even get legal permission to use the IPMC from ICC for this ordinance?
We have been a member of the IMBC, the organization, since our.
What was the organization name?
The International.
That was sarcastic.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so nobody read it. You don't even have the latest copy
There's
of
a
the
podium if
IPMC
you-
in the
Sir,
ordinance.
If you would actually like to address the board, then you can come to the podium.
Last time I did, I was. Okay, so.
Excuse me, before you start, this is the we have 3 minutes, we have an entire agenda to go through.
You can have
We-
my 3 minutes.
Well, that's not how this works. So,
Yes, it does.
you know, there's a public comment afterwards, okay? So please respect the procedure that we go through. This is a civil procedure, please respect it.
I'll agree with that, on the idea that you respect these gentlemen behind us, ladies and gentlemen behind us. The ICC and IPMC, which a moment ago you
Wait
couldn't
a
even.
minute, you're insinuating that I don't respect this.
Does anybody feel that they were respected during this process at all?
Okay.
No.
All right,
Okay, may I continue?
so that's not respecting the civil process to grandstand with the entire group. There's a procedure here that we go through as a civil procedure. Please
Not
respect
your
the
resident
procedure.
night.
That's not respectful.
Let him go.
3 minutes, and we'll listen. We obviously have.
So, a moment ago, you couldn't even name the organization that it is. That's the code, that's not the organization of the ICC. Yes. Okay, and not, the ordinance doesn't even acknowledge the current IPMC from ICC. So it wasn't just cut and paste. This is kind of the concerns we have in relation to this. When she brought up the ICC, which I've got seen on my desk right now, nobody had indicated they've read it. You indicated now that you have. Nobody indicated they didn't even open that book. That's why we are having these concerns.
Just for everybody in the audience behind me, I'll speak to you. The ICC is a parent organization that adopts all of our codes. They're based on one variant or another of the International Code Council. Alpena Township, up until March, as long as you pay your subscription renewal, has the 2015 and the previous International Property Maintenance Code online. You can't access it from outside of this building, but anytime any governmental organization adopts any code, you have to have at least one copy at your place of business here that's available for immediate public viewing. And that's why you have building codes, they're all in there. The gentleman's comment about the current edition, unfortunately, the state of Michigan adopts the construction codes, and in our construction codes right now, we're already all on the International Property Maintenance Code for existing buildings. Section 102.7 in the residential code clearly states that, whether you're doing building or not, you have to apply with that code, and that deals with structures inside, outside, whether you like it or not.
Hi, I'm Amy Wilson. I am a realtor in Alpena, and I am the president of the Water Wonderland Board. We have a membership of over 397 folks, and we service over 13 counties in Michigan, Alpena being one of the main ones. I know that you had received the letter that I had written, through the Water Wonderland Board, and I'd like to make sure that you pass that on to them. As well today, I'm also, want to share with you a letter that our board has received from McClellan and Anderson, a attorney at law firm out of Lansing. They represent the Michigan Realtors. This letter was written from David Pearson, a lawyer there, and he is stating, I am writing on behalf of Michigan Realtors concerning ordinance number 135, the amendment and adoption of International Property Maintenance Code. As you know, from the letter you received from Water Wonderland Board of Realtors, the concern of realtors and the Michigan Realtors includes the protection and preservation of private property rights. The Michigan Realtors share the Water Wonderland Board of Realtors' belief and strong support for efforts to improve neighborhoods and to prevent blight. The ordinance, however, raises a number of questions. The first has to be whether additional regulation is needed beyond the existing housing code. The new ordinance also adopts points of sale provisions that are arbitrary, unfair, and unnecessary to accomplish the goals of the ordinance and conscripts realtors in the enforcement of the ordinance, contrary to their duties to their clients. All rental dwellings must be registered and meet additional requirements for a certificate of compliance, including all code, all ordinance inspections. The reason for adopting such broad new requirements should be well documented and of such a degree as to warrant a whole new layer of regulation. The enforcement materials provided so far make clear that the inspection can cover any extraordinary can cover any extraordinary level of detail, including 8 separate provisions for cement alone. At that point, it would seem apparent any property meeting those terms is in compliance. Instead, the ordinance then requires that anyone purchasing such a rental home, regardless of the time that has passed, file and pay for an entirely new registration, and that the property undergo a complete inspection with all compliance be done again. While registration and inspection of rental properties, if not at this level and frequency, is not uncommon in Michigan, the requirement of complete code and ordinance enforcement inspections every time any residential property is sold is extraordinary. It is coupled with an extremely broad and intrusive right of entry, well beyond what almost any local government imposes on its citizens. The difficulties created by point of sale or time of transfer ordinances are numerous. Although they seem easy to mandate, they create an arbitrary and very irregular system for code enforcement not driven by the need for inspections. A house may not be sold for 20 or 30 years, or it may be sold several times in a few years. As home inspections have become the rule, not the exception, in almost all home sales, the addition of a government mandate is striking and appears completely unnecessary. The ordinance then requires licensed brokers to enforce the law or face penalties. Such action may well violate the legal and ethical duties owed by the broker to the party he or she represents. Under the language of the ordinance, it is also not at all clear when that duty begins. Could a broker violate it simply by signing a listing agreement? Does the duty attach when the broker presents an offer, when the sale is closed? The ordinance does not make that and other points clear, but attaches substantial penalties to any violation. That ambiguity also opens the ordinance to arbitrary enforcement. The adoption of such an ordinance without broad public recognition of a crisis that requires such intrusive measure certainly argues strongly for repeal and careful public consideration of the necessity of adopting it, with careful consideration of what new regulation is in fact needed. And that was by David Pearson, attorney with McClellan and Anderson. And I would just like to make sure
It
that
is also logged, it's already in your correspondence as it is for everybody, but we'll make sure that everybody has that.
Perfect, I appreciate that.
It was in the agenda.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on with our agenda.
I have one question.
Yes.
Hey, Don, she brought up a great question. A rental dwelling in the city of Alpena, which by the way, I was on the planning commission when we started to mess around with that.
Right, in the late 90s.
And so, with regard to a rental dwelling, if a person buys a rental and then that person subsequently sells that rental within that 3-year timeline, does the city re-inspect, or do they say, we already know that one?
No, what we do is we require within 30 days of a new ownership that they, within 30 days of purchase, most of the realtors know that they just file a new form free of charge.
Okay.
And then the only time the city goes in, other than, out of the normal inspection process, is on a complaint by a tenant. Believe me, you'll get plenty of them. And then you have to decide who pays for that, because the landlord's not doing it, and the tenants don't have the money. So that, again, goes back to the thought process. But yeah, I thought that was one of the things I was gonna bring up, as soon as I got to the committee.
Thank you.
December 28th and January 14th.
Move to accept.
Motion, is there support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported, any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
The December 17th minutes,
Yes.
on page 4, talking about the fleet cards for the DPW. It was in that motion, I made the motion, and Clerk Plavich supported it, and then we would also add the ambulance, Bravo units to the fleet cards.
Okay. So, are you asking for a friendly amendment to the minutes of December 17th? You made the motion, Norm, would you be willing to make a friendly amendment to, or Mr. Lappin, on December 17th?
Yeah, I did. I'll accept it. Yeah.
Yes, you done. Okay, there's a friendly amendment to the December, correction of the December 17th meeting. Okay. Yeah, no. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion passed. On to payment of bills. I believe that the log of bills have been passed around that need to have signatures. Do we have a motion to make payment of the bills?
So moved.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
And Lappin support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion passed. Moving on to correspondence. Oh, yes. This is for the bills. Roll call. Yep. Roll call, please. Sorry. I got it.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Plavich, yes. Treasury Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. Moving on to correspondence. Is there a motion to receive and file the correspondence as presented? So moved.
Motion to accept.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I reviewed the correspondence and this notice of case number 18-12794 is not in the packet, and I don't know what it is.
Oh, it was, in terms of that, it was a downstate legal argument between DTE and they send it statewide to all residents in regards to municipalities that have no conflict.
Can we just put maybe a little more
It
information?
was a 30-page document.
I mean, just so we know what it is, because that
Yeah.
doesn't really say what it is.
So, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. On to new business. This is, Tim, you can take point on adoption of ordinance 136.
Okay, I'll do so. We can pass these down to you and everybody else. Ordinance 136 is the prohibition of marijuana establishments ordinance. This pertains to recreational marijuana and the recent laws that were adopted after the election. Unlike the medical marijuana statutes that state you're not allowing it unless you affirmatively do an ordinance to allow medical marijuana businesses, the new laws regarding recreational marijuana state that you're in unless you do an ordinance to opt out for now. So a lot of my municipal clients are doing exactly that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're opted out forever. It means that you're opted out for the time being, because the state is still formulating regulations, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of municipalities around the state are doing this. So at our last meeting, because we're a charter township, we have to introduce the ordinance. This ordinance was introduced, and a notice was published in the paper, and the notice stated that we were going to consider adoption of the ordinance at this meeting. Again, this is, and then I'll publish a notice of adoption, assuming that the board adopts the ordinance. So, if there are any questions,
Well, and one strengthening argument to that is the majority of the township voters voted against recreational marijuana. And so we're following the voice of the public there again.
And if, down the road, if you're approached by business interests that want to convince you otherwise, you've got the freedom to repeal this ordinance and then draft ordinances regulating any recreational marijuana establishments. So, if you're inclined to adopt it, I would need a motion to adopt ordinance 136.
I'll make that motion. Actually, if we do, is there any term of the opt-out? Is there any length of term?
No.
You can do it anytime you want.
It's indefinitely, and we can repeal it at any time.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. Motion passed.
Hey, because I listened so well and I've gotta fill out the ordinance tomorrow and get it to you, Michelle. Who made the motion? Who supported?
Polly.
Polly made the motion
And support by
and
him.
trustee Dunkel.
All right. Thank you, that's it.
Okay. Moving on to the next item of new business is the Alpena County, Road Commission, Lakewood Special Assessment, and I believe that
That's me.
you again.
All right, this is a special assessment project proposed by Larry Orcott at the Road Commission. Township has been involved in these types of projects in the past. This is Grand Lake Road from US 23 north to Lakewood Drive to the westerly intersection, and Lakewood Drive from US 23 north to Grand Lake Road for resurfacing and making a new road. This is going to be a combination, if it goes, combination Road Commission Township project. We've done this before with County Park Road, Long Lake Park Road, a number of years ago, and it was successful. And it's a project that the Road Commission takes the lead, does the engineering, the design work, that type of thing. The cost is then spread among the property owners, but both the Road Commission and the Township contributing to the cost. And it's something that the Township has been discussing, trying to budget for each year. The proposed amount from the Road Commission is 25% of the estimated cost, which would be $37,500, and the same amount for the Township, and then the rest for the property owners. We'll go through the special assessment process. The property owners will have an opportunity to provide their input and object if they don't want this. Informal petitions have gone around indicating that they are interested in it. So this agreement states the relationship between the Road Commission and the Township and authorizes us to go forward with the project, which requires the whole special assessment project, which gives the board another opportunity to say, we change our mind or we're not gonna go forward with it. It's just to start the process going. So it would be a motion to authorize the supervisor and the clerk to execute the Road Commission Township Lakewood Special Assessment District Agreement.
Do you remember?
Do you have that, okay.
I will write it down, I promise.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yeah, do you remember the percentage of that group that voted for this?
There was 98% support in that jurisdiction. Yeah, so that assessment is, right as it stands currently, well above the 50%. That would be a requirement.
That's what got Larry Orcott's attention, since it was
Yeah,
a
so
popular project.
is there a motion to move forward with the Lakewood Special Assessment between the Road Commission and the Township of Alpena?
And authorize the execution of the agreement with the Road Commission.
So moved. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Lappin. Any further discussion?
I just have a couple of points. Do we know, how the assessment, is it a 10-year assessment? Is it a?
Normally, you don't, that's a typical period of time, you don't want an assessment to go longer than a road's gonna last, so, that's something that, the road engineer, Lori Orcott and company, it's a decision that needs to be made still.
Okay, and then I guess my second question is.
Sorry, but I'm having a hard time hearing.
My question had to
It's
do
the
with.
background noise that it's.
Yeah.
You mind if we close the door?
I just asked the question as to how long the assessment was, typically 10 years, and so I just wondered how that went. And then I also wondered, oftentimes, property owners, pay by the linear foot, and sometimes there are property owners that have appreciably more linear feet, and they may not wanna pay as much. Is that any of our concern at all?
Well, you're hitting all the issues directly. That's another, when you form these special assessment projects, you look at the length of time, you look at how to assess them. A lot of times it's front foot. Sometimes lots are uniform, and you say per lot. Sometimes you look at unit benefit, and the road commission's got a bad algebra problem, but, a procedure they use, so we'll be looking at that too, but, so those will all be things that need to be approved in the upcoming steps. And it also then goes to the property owners, so they're alerted that here's how this is gonna be assessed, so if they've got a problem with it, they have a right to object.
All right, so
we don't know at this point.
Our position at this point is to simply move forward, allow the supervisor to move forward, and then the road commission establishes whatever magic math they come up.
And then I, bring it back to you and explain it to you, that this is the way it's set up, and then the documentation consists of several resolutions.
Okay.
And the resolutions then spell all that out too.
We're not on the line for any prescribed amount of money at this point, and
You're not, you might go to budget, and you might decide we can't participate, and then it stops.
yeah, we're essentially acting as the fiduciary
Correct.
for the process.
Both the township and the county have that mechanism. The way that this project is actually scheduled doesn't fall within the parameters of the county's projects, i.e. the other three special assessments that we've already moved forward to support, Pole Road, Burke Manor, and Eldon Drive. They are the fiduciary for those special assessments, although we are a partner within those projects. This one is in a different format where it actually goes through the township in regards to this.
Yeah, Act 188, and so that's a common procedure. We haven't done it recently, but.
23 South.
What we did,
Yeah, 23 South.
23 South North Point
Yes.
Road was another one we did.
Yeah, that's a private road, but that ties into the real similar process, but, so it's not as complicated as it sounds, but there are a lot of steps.
For you then.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Keeps me awake.
So we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Okay.
This will, just a question, but this will have to be discussed for next year's budget, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
So we have this project and another one we've already approved for next year.
We have three that we've already moved forward with.
Those were right at one time. Right?
Yes, yeah, because it was a cost savings benefit to do all three, through the county road commission than to do three individuals. Seeing no other further discussion, roll call vote please.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next is, and do you wanna take this as well? or-
Okay, I gotta look at the agenda.
We, at a previous meeting, we also, passed by motion, and not resolution, the potential to set forth, a secondary date for Board of Trustee meetings, which would be the second Tuesday of every month at 11 a.m. as needed. We passed that by motion, but by legal standards, it has to be passed by resolution before we brought it back onto the docket to be appropriately addressed.
Right, the statute, as Nathan just stated, requires a resolution, and the resolution will address just the remainder of this fiscal year, because each time you do your budget resolution, you schedule your upcoming meetings. And so what we're doing is adding a second monthly meeting. So this resolution is just covering from now through March 31st. So we're cleaning this up so that we can have a second meeting. So then, in our budget resolution, we'll start all over and do it again. So I need a motion in support for the resolution regarding Board of Trustees meeting schedule. And once we have it, I'll fill it in tomorrow and
You get that to me?
email it to you.
Thank you.
I'll move to, support the resolution regarding Board of Trustees meeting schedule.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
I'll only make one.
Well, we have Mr. Foley's.
You've said that there will be a second meeting at 11 a.m. on the second Tuesday as needed. It doesn't say that in here. That we're just gonna plain have it, and if we're not gonna have it, we have to.
Because it's a regular meeting, we need to
Stick
schedule
to
it, yeah.
Okay, so it's not as needed.
Right.
But if we don't need a meeting, we can always cancel our regularly scheduled meeting in
order to change the time would require another resolution.
Yes. That was a hinge point there. So at least having it set, if we don't need to utilize it, then we always will have, as it currently and has stood for our fourth Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Unfortunately, due to the vortex, here we sit Thursday. Warm at least. So seeing no further discussion, let's do a roll call on that as well, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Motion passed. Next item of new business is the resolution regarding the adoption of joint recreation planning effort of Alpena communities.
Okay, I wasn't involved with this from the beginning. You've got your planner, zoning planner from NEMCOG, Steve Schnell. And so he's been working with the planning commission and with the supervisor regarding the joint recreation planning effort of Alpena communities. And the communities include Alpena Township and Alpena County, Green Township, Otsonique Township, and Wilson Township. Went to your planning commission. They've adopted an identical resolution, except they're stating, we recommend the board now adopt this resolution. And so this is part of the planning process, part of the zoning process, part of your planning commission's work, and public documentation. So if the public wants to consult this or review anything from this, they can at the township. And also, public input was received from the NEMCOG planners to help formulate the plan. So this will be, again, something I'll get to Michelle tomorrow to fill in, but be a motion to adopt this resolution with support, and I'll take it from there tomorrow.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution regarding the joint rec plan effort for the Alpena communities? So moved. Motion on the table. Do we have support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
This will put us in sync with the other townships.
Exactly.
And this is a cost savings in the long run.
Yes, yes. The planning commission has already moved forward, and I believe that it's near total completion. But that way, out of the 9 townships, and then the county, I believe, we have half of which are current and on the same timeline. So it'll be a cost savings measure moving forward for not only the charter township of Alpena, but numerous other municipalities within the county.
Steve's resolution provides that it's a process of developing a community recreation plan in accordance with the most recent guidelines developed by the Department of Natural Resources. So, one of these processes that we get involved in with zoning.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Motion passed. Next on the agenda is a resolution regarding the Friends of Rockport, resolution for a charitable gaming license.
Okay, I had nothing to do with this, but it's a state farm, and it's when a nonprofit organization wants to obtain a license to run a bingo game or whatever the game of chance is. And so here we've got the Friends of Rockport Besser Natural Area Organization. It's a legitimate nonprofit organization, and so part of the requirement under the law is that the local municipality provide it's okay. And we've done this before. I recommend we do it again. It's a state form, so I don't have to fill out anything. Michelle, you can just fill it out by hand and give it back to whoever runs the Friends of Rockport Besser Natural Area group. And that's it. So it doesn't mean you love gambling. You got a problem, but
Do we have a motion to support the resolution for the charitable gaming license? I'll make that motion. Support. Been moved and supported. Do we have any other discussion?
It was Polly made the motion.
Correct. And supported by them. Roll call.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich,
at this point, I would, have Nate Thompson, our DPW director, number 28, and January 14th.
Move to accept.
Motion, is there support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported, any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
The December 17th minutes,
Yes.
on page 4, talking about the fleet cards for the DPW. It was in that motion, I made the motion, and Clerk Plavich supported it, that we would also add the ambulance, Bravo units to the fleet cards.
Okay. So, is there, are you asking for a friendly amendment to the minutes of December 17th? You made the motion, Norm, would you be willing to make a friendly amendment to, or Mr. Lappin, on December 17th?
Yeah, I did. I'll accept it.
Yes, you done. Okay, there's a friendly amendment to the December, correction of the December 17th meeting. Okay. Yeah, no. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion passed. On to payment of bills. I believe that the log of bills have been passed around that need to have signatures. Do we have a motion to make payment of the bills?
So moved.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
And Lappin support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion passed. Moving on to correspondence. Oh, yes.
Was that for the bill?
This is for the bills. Roll call.
Roll call.
Yep. Roll call, please. Sorry. I got it.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Plavich, yes. Treasury Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. Moving on to correspondence. Is there a motion to receive and file the correspondence as presented? So moved.
Motion to accept.
Is there, any discussion?
Yes, I reviewed the correspondence, and this notice of case number 18-12794 is not in the packet, and I don't know what it is.
Oh, it was, in terms of that, it was a downstate legal, argument between DTE and they send it statewide to all residents, and regards to municipalities that have no conflict.
Can we just put maybe a little more
It
information?
was a 30-page document.
I mean, just so we know what it is, because that
Yeah.
doesn't really say what it is.
So, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. On to new business. This is, Tim, you can take point on adoption of ordinance 136.
Okay, I'll do so. We can pass these down to you and everybody else. Ordinance 136 is the prohibition of marijuana establishments ordinance. This pertains to recreational marijuana and the recent laws that were adopted after the election. Unlike the medical marijuana statutes that state you're not allowing it unless you affirmatively do an ordinance to allow medical marijuana businesses, the new laws regarding recreational marijuana state that you're in unless you do an ordinance to opt out for now. So a lot of my municipal clients are doing exactly that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're opted out forever. It means that you're opted out for the time being, because the state is still formulating regulations, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of municipalities around the state are doing this. So at our last meeting, because we're a charter township, we have to introduce the ordinance. This ordinance was introduced, and a notice was published in the paper, and the notice stated that we were going to consider adoption of the ordinance at this meeting. Again, this is, and then I'll publish a notice of adoption, assuming that the board adopts the ordinance. So, if there are any questions,
Well, and one strengthening argument to that is the majority of the township voters, voted against, recreational marijuana. And so we're following the voice of the public there again.
And if, down the road, if you're approached by business interests that want to convince you otherwise, you've got the freedom to repeal this ordinance and then draft ordinances regulating any recreational marijuana establishments. So, if you're inclined to adopt it, I would need a motion to adopt ordinance 136.
I'll make that motion.
If we do, is there any term of the opt-out? Is there any length of term?
No.
You can do it anytime you want.
It's indefinitely, and we can repeal it at any time.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. Motion passed.
Okay, because I listened so well and I've got to fill out the ordinance tomorrow and get it to you, Michelle. Who made the motion? Who supported?
Polly.
Polly made the motion
Support by
and
him.
trustee Dunkel.
All right. Thank you, that's it.
Okay. Moving on to the next item of new business is the Alpena County, Road Commission, Lakewood Special Assessment, and I believe that
That's me.
you again.
All right, this is a special assessment project proposed by Larry Orcott at the Road Commission. The Township has been involved in these types of projects in the past. This is Grand Lake Road from US 23 north to Lakewood Drive to the westerly intersection, and Lakewood Drive from US 23 north to Grand Lake Road for resurfacing and making a new road. This is going to be a combination, if it goes, combination Road Commission Township project. We've done this before with County Park Road, Long Lake Park Road, a number of years ago, and it was successful. And it's a project that the Road Commission takes the lead, does the engineering, the design work, that type of thing. The cost is then spread among the property owners, but both the Road Commission and the Township contributing to the cost. And it's something that the Township has been discussing, trying to budget for each year. The proposed amount from the Road Commission is 25% of the estimated cost, which would be $37,500, and the same amount for the Township, and then the rest for the property owners. We'll go through the special assessment process. The property owners will have an opportunity to provide their input and object if they don't want this. Informal petitions have gone around indicating that they are interested in it. So this agreement states the relationship between the Road Commission and the Township and authorizes us to go forward with the project, which requires the whole special assessment project, which gives the board another opportunity to say, we change our mind or we're not gonna go forward with it. It's just to start the process going. So it would be a motion to authorize the supervisor and the clerk to execute the Road Commission Township Lakewood Special Assessment District Agreement.
Do you remember?
You have that, okay.
I will write it down, I promise.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yeah, do you remember the percentage of that group that voted for this?
There was 98% support in that jurisdiction. Yeah, so that assessment is, right as it stands currently, well above the 50% that would be a requirement.
That's what got Larry Orcott's attention, since it was
Yeah,
a
so
popular project.
is there a motion to move forward with the Lakewood Special Assessment between the Road Commission and the Township of Alpena?
And authorize the execution of the agreement with the Road Commission.
So moved. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Lappin. Any further discussion?
I just have a couple of points. Do we know, how the assessment, is it a 10-year assessment? Is it a?
Normally, you don't, that's a typical period of time, you don't want an assessment to go longer than a road's gonna last, so, that's something that, the road engineer, Lori Orcott and company, is a decision that needs to be made still.
Okay, and then I guess my second question is,
Sorry, but I'm having a hard time hearing.
my question had to
It's
do
the
with.
background noise that it's.
Yeah, could you
You mind if we close the door?
I just asked the question as to how long the assessment was, typically 10 years, and so I just wondered how that went. And then I also wondered, oftentimes, property owners, pay by the linear foot, and sometimes there are property owners that have appreciably more linear feet, and they may not wanna pay as much. Is that any of our concern at all?
Well, you're hitting all the issues directly. That's another, when you form these special assessment projects, you look at the length of time, you look at how to assess them. A lot of times it's front foot. Sometimes, lots are uniform, and you say per lot. Sometimes you look at unit benefit, and the road commission's got a bad algebra problem, but, a procedure they use, so we'll be looking at that too, but, so those will all be things that need to be approved in the upcoming steps. And it also then goes to the property owners, so they're alerted that here's how this is gonna be assessed, so if they've got a problem with it, they have a right to object.
All right, so
we don't know at this point.
Our position at this point is to simply move forward, allow the supervisor to move forward, and then the road commission establishes whatever magic math they come up with.
And then I, bring it back to you and explain it to you, that this is the way it's set up, and then the documentation consists of several resolutions.
Okay.
And the resolutions then spell all that out too.
We're not on the line for any prescribed amount of money at this point, and
You're not, you might go to budget, and you might decide we can't participate, and then it stops.
yeah, we're essentially acting as the fiduciary
Correct.
for the process.
Both the township and the county have that mechanism. The way that this project is actually scheduled doesn't fall within the parameters of the county's projects, i.e. the other three special assessments that we've already moved forward to support, Pole Road, Burke Manor, and Eldon Drive. They are the fiduciary for those special assessments, although we are a partner within those projects. This one is in a different format where it actually goes through the township in regards to this.
Yeah, it's Act 188, and so that's a common procedure. We haven't done it recently, but.
What we did,
Yeah,
23 South,
would have been
23 South North Point
Yes.
Road was another one we did.
Yeah, that's a private road, but that ties into the real similar process, but, so it's not as complicated as it sounds, but there are a lot of steps.
For you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Keeps me awake.
So we have a motion and support. Any further discussions? Seeing none? Okay.
This will, just a question, but this will have to be discussed for next year's budget, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
So we have this project and another one we've already approved for next year.
We have three that we've already moved forward with.
Those were right at one time. Right?
Yes, yeah, because it was a cost savings benefit to do all three, through the county road commission than to do the three individuals. Seeing no other further discussion, roll call vote please.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next is, and do you wanna take this as well? or-
Okay, I gotta look at the agenda.
We, at a previous meeting, we also, passed by motion, and not resolution, the potential to set forth, a secondary date for Board of Trustee meetings, which would be the second Tuesday of every month at 11 a.m. as needed. We passed that by motion, but by legal standards, it has to be passed by resolution before we bring it back onto the docket to be appropriately addressed.
Right, the statute, as Nathan just stated, requires a resolution, and the resolution will address just the remainder of this fiscal year, because each time you do your budget resolution, you schedule your upcoming meetings. And so what we're doing is adding a second monthly meeting, so this resolution is just covering from now through March 31st. So we're cleaning this up so that we can have a second meeting. So then, in our budget resolution, we'll start all over and do it again. So I need a motion in support for the resolution regarding Board of Trustees meeting schedule. And once we have it, I'll fill it in tomorrow and
You get that, Tim?
email it to you.
Thank you.
I'll move to, support the resolution regarding Board of Trustees meeting schedule.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, do we have support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported, any further discussion?
Yeah.
I'll only make one.
Well, we have Mr. Foley's.
You've said that there will be a second meeting at 11 a.m. on the second Tuesday as needed. It doesn't say that in here. That we're just gonna plain have it, and if we're not gonna have it, we.
Because it's a regular meeting, we need to schedule it, yeah.
Okay, so it's not as needed.
Right.
But if we don't need a meeting, we can always cancel our regularly scheduled meeting.
In order to change the time would require another resolution.
Yes. That was a hinge point there. So at least having it set, if we don't need to utilize it, then we always will have, as it currently and has stood for our fourth Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Unfortunately, due to the vortex, here we sit Thursday. Warm at least. So seeing no further discussion, let's do a roll call on that as well, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Motion passed. Next item of new business is the resolution regarding the adoption of joint recreation planning effort of Alpena communities.
Okay, I wasn't involved with this from the beginning. You've got your planner, zoning planner from NEMCOG, Steve Schnell. And so he's been working with the planning commission and with the supervisor regarding the joint recreation planning effort of Alpena communities. And the communities include Alpena Township and Alpena County, Green Township, Otsonique Township, and Wilson Township. Went to your planning commission. They've adopted an identical resolution, except they're stating, we recommend the board now adopt this resolution. And so this is part of the planning process, part of the zoning process, part of your planning commission's work, and public documentation. So if the public wants to consult this or review anything from this, they can at the township. And also, public input was received from the NEMCOG planners to help formulate the plan. So this will be, or again, something I'll get to Michelle tomorrow to fill in, but be a motion to adopt this resolution with support, and I'll take it from there tomorrow.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution regarding the joint rec plan effort for the Alpena communities? So moved. Motion on the table, do we have support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
This will put us in sync with the other townships.
Exactly.
And
That was-
this is a cost savings in the long run.
Yes, yes. The planning commission has already moved forward, and I believe that it's near total completion. But that way, out of the 9 townships, and then the county, I believe, we have half of which are current and on the same timeline. So it'll be a cost savings measure moving forward for not only the charter township of Alpena, but numerous other municipalities within the county.
Steve's resolution provides that it's a process of developing a community recreation plan in accordance with the most recent guidelines developed by the Department of Natural Resources. So, one of these processes that we get involved in with zoning.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, roll call vote please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Motion passed. Next on the agenda is a resolution regarding the Friends of Rockport, resolution for a charitable gaming license.
Okay, I had nothing to do with this, but it's a state form, and it's when a nonprofit organization wants to obtain a license to run a bingo game or whatever the game of chance is. And so, here we've got the Friends of Rockport Besser Natural Area Organization. It's a legitimate nonprofit organization, and so part of the requirement under the law is that the local municipality provide it's okay. And we've done this before. I recommend we do it again. It's a state form, so I don't have to fill out anything. Michelle, you can just fill it out by hand and give it back to whoever runs the Friends of Rockport Besser Natural Area group. And that's it. So it doesn't mean you love gambling. If you got a problem, but
Do we have a motion to support the resolution for the charitable gaming license? I'll make that motion. Been moved and supported. Do we have any other discussion?
It was fully made the motion.
Correct. And supported by Bill. Roll call.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers? Yes. Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. Going home. The next item of new business, at this point, I would, have, Nate Thompson, our DPW director. Not for us, it already beat you.
I'm Michael Doggle, I'm at 100 Kelly Drive. I became a resident in this township in September of 2015, and I was immediately hit with my first water bill, like everybody else was bringing up, and I was really taken aback. Now, I don't know the whole story. All I know is that I was paying twice as much as what the bill was calling for. And my humble opinion is that if the water bill had just gone up by 10% over the last 3 years that I've been here, I would have been happy with that, instead of paying double just to cover all the expenses, which to me just doesn't seem to make sense. That being said, I wanted to say one other thing. On something as important as this ordinance 135, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't read the paper, and I don't go to your website daily, okay? So, I do get mail. So I'm just wondering, why don't we, on something as important as this ordinance, we weren't notified that something like this was coming in the mail? I think the small things I can understand, this gets taken care of, it's supposed to. But something this large, I think everybody that was on this committee of this board probably realized it was gonna stir up the hornet's nest. And I think with the reaction I've seen here tonight, I live in a small township of Alpena. A lot of things just happened under the table, and not everybody was informed until after the fact, and we had a lot of snowbirds that didn't find out about it until they came back in May. So all I'm asking is, if you have something that's important, there's gotta be other people other than myself that don't read the paper every day, we don't go to your website every day, but we do get mail every day, unless it's zero out. And when we don't, eventually we will. I just would like to say that that would be something I think would be appreciated by not only myself, but a lot of others.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Reinhardt.
Russ Reiner, 315 Park Drive in the township. I came here tonight with every intention of not saying anything, but in response to the lady that just spoke a few minutes ago, and not necessarily in response, but I think I need to commend you folks, because you're personally involved in the water, sewer rate negotiations. You're involved in the efforts to resolve it. But I'm not a great negotiator probably, but I taught negotiations at college or at Spring Arbor, and I've read some books on it. And one of the things that I know is you can't go into a negotiation with the attitude that you have to make a deal. That's been pointed out at federal levels of late, and a lot of politicians don't understand that, but I think you folks do, and you're personally involved in it, and I commend you for that. My fault for the city council is that they haven't been. They've been relying on 2 staff people to lead them along, and they haven't, in my opinion, been fully informed. I think that's where the fault lies. I think you both sides have 2 excellent rate experts, as near as I can tell. Judge Mack relied on those rate experts, and they came to an agreement even when you and the city couldn't believe that's because, the city has failed to listen to their own rate expert and the solution they came up with. So, I have to commend you that, you don't listen to all of us. I'm in the group, I joined the group that says, let's get this settled. But the pressure isn't just on you, right? So, I appreciate how you handle that. I understand what's happened with ordinance 135. I know I was vocal about that, and I appreciate that you're looking at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reinhardt. Is there any other public comment? I would like this to make the comment that as I did on the 18th during the public input session, appreciate everybody's attendance. This governing board is a representative of the residents of this great township. And moving forward, I think we have a potential solution that will adequately address and find a palatable solution moving forward. And I look forward to the process beginning, and having it brought back to the people. We'll use even more media forms, as turns to the mail. The unfortunate reality with mailing a 19-page document to 9,100 residences is not a fiscally sound decision. I do not belittle the fact that a better aspect should and potentially will be approached in the future. But all comments help us become better leaders. And I know I personally appreciate everybody that's taken the time to write a letter to this board, to me as an individual, called me. We are a board that is a representative of you. And so what affects you affects us, and vice versa. So I appreciate all of your attendance there again. And hopefully in the future, we'll have a recommendation coming back to where we can set forth another input session where everybody can be adequately informed as to whatever progress has been made before a recommendation is brought back to this board. So thank you. I'm Mr. Trustee Pulley.
I'd just like to thank everybody for attending. I just wish we could get this kind of folks to come to all of our meetings, but we understand we've got a committee, and I'm hoping that this committee will take a lemon and turn it into lemonade. It's gonna take some hard work, but we're putting our trust in them that they'll bring that back to us. Thanks for coming tonight.
Is there any other discussion? I'll entertain the
So
motion.
moved.
I'll entertain the motion to adjourn. Mr. Larson is already there.